This tutorial is how to draw a realistic looking nose. A lot of people struggle with noses, and I think it's a lot because everything is shading. Quite a bit of it is shading. All right, so we're gonna start I'm gonna start near the bottom of my paper here, and I'm going to draw what's gonna look like a hill and a little bit of a valley and then another hill. And this is going to be the bottom of our nose. Now on the outside of that, I'm going to draw kind of like parentheses, and the parentheses are going to surround the ends of our hills. So take a minute and get the shape that you want for your nose. Now everybody's nose is a little bit different. This is again just a kind of a generic nose. So this unfortunately is the only lines that I'm actually going to draw whenever it comes to the nose. Everything else is going to be shading. So there's quite a bit of shading going on with the nose. So I like to start with the darkest part because that's what I'm comfortable with. I know that this is the darkest area where the nostrils are, and I'm going to fade that out pretty quickly. A lot of people draw these as perfect circles, and that's where you get the pig nose. Now remember, we're not looking up the nose right now, we're looking at the front view. So those perfect circles are actually kind of more ellipses, more ovals, okay? I'm going to extend that shading a little bit below the nose here. Kind of soften up that edge. Now we did some nice shading where the nostrils are. We also need to do some shading above that. Now if you feel your nose, there's really no hard edges, right? Everything's really soft and curves. So we really need to lighten up our edges a little bit, soften up those edges with a little bit of shading. So I'm going to do a little bit of shading above my nostrils too, just to soften it up. All right, my next easiest part is going to be shading where my parentheses are. So I'm going to shade a little bit here and then very quickly fade it out. I can do the same thing over here. Avoid taking your finger and smudging. Like I never actually take my finger and just smudge that in. I really just try to vary the pressure on my pencil and use my pencil to blend it. All right, so we got a good solid start, but it looks really flat in the center. And this is actually right here is kind of where the tip of our nose is. So what I'm going to do is I'm very lightly, you're going to barely even be able to see this. Okay, I want you to very lightly draw in kind of a circle. You see how you can barely see it? It's almost just like a ghost there. And that's really going to help me with guiding my shading in the interior part of my nose. So this is going to be where kind of the tip of my nose is. So my bridge is going to be kind of right here, and my nostrils are going to kind of come here. So really I have kind of like three areas of highlight. I have a highlight here, I'm going to have a highlight here, and a highlight here. And I need to be aware of those areas of highlight. So I'm first going to start by building up some of the shading around that circle. Now I'm doing this very lightly, especially to begin with. I don't want to go too drastic with my shading right away because then I might make mistakes. So I'm just going to be very light with adding some of these light values. These are like 2 values on the value scale, very light. And then I can build it up to maybe a 3, but I wouldn't go even much higher than a 3. So as I'm starting to shade, you're starting to see that I have some like peaks and valleys on my nose. It doesn't look so flat like it did before. I'm going to shade a little bit inside of that circle that I drew to begin with to help me with my shading. I might increase some of the shading underneath because that's where the light hits the most, or doesn't hit the most. The light hits more on the top. Right, so it's starting to look like there's kind of like this 3D area. So you can build up the shading as, as dark as you want. I'm actually going to keep it fairly light. I'm going to build up the shading here where the bridge of the nose is, and then it's going to fade out. So now I can start thinking about the top part of my nose, because I feel like the bottom part is looking pretty solid. So I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to fade it up. So it's almost going to look like my nose, the bottom of my nose is kind of wearing a hat, kind of like a wizard hat. And it's just going to fade out. All right, so these two parts are kind of just lingering out there, so I need to kind of connect them too and fade those up as well. So I'm just building up some of the shading so it looks a little bit more like a nose. But I really try to avoid just drawing lines for the side of the nose. I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of people make. That makes their nose very flat and very cartoony. So try to avoid going for the sides of your nose, okay? Just build up the shades is really what you need to do. There you go. That's how to draw a nose.